and join me in prayer. Everyone, please bow your heads. Dear Lord, we come before you this evening, thanking you for this beautiful, nice, warm day that you have provided us with, and we ask you to continue to bless our lives and bless our meeting tonight. Guide our hearts and minds to make decisions in the best interest of our water system and its members. We remember tonight all the folks in Hawaii who've lost their lives, their homes, their way of living. We pray for them. We pray for our first responders, military men and women, law enforcement, all those who work to keep us safe and free. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Darrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to announce that we have a quorum. I want to thank everyone for being here at our August regular board meeting. We do have audio and video recorders in use. I would like to let everybody know that we don't have a court reporter tonight. She got delayed on another job that she was working on, so it's very important that everyone just speak one person at a time and keep the background noise to a minimum, so when we do try to get the transcript from the recording, we can hear what everybody has said and get it right. If you would like to speak, please fill out the member forum sign-up sheet that's in the lobby. If you'd like to speak on a specific agenda item before we vote, please be recognized and come to the podium and state your name. And that will happen after the board does their discussion, then we'll allow comments from any membership. That's all of our announcements. First item is the approval of the minutes and transcripts. We have the July 6th, 2023 open executive meeting minutes. We have the July 6th closed executive meeting minutes. We have the July 18th closed executive meeting minutes. And we have the July 18th regular meeting minutes and transcripts. I'd like to get a motion to approve those as submitted.
So moved.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
All right, do we have any discussion? No comments, Mr. Thiel? That's right. They were pretty good this month.
It was pretty good this month.
All righty, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? That motion carries. Approval of memberships. We have 310 new memberships for July, 282 canceled memberships, and 0 transfers. Can I get a motion to approve the membership report?
A motion to approve the membership report.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move on to our first item of new business. CEO update, Mr. Krigler.
Yes, I have 2 items to update tonight. The first is the forensic audit. I was corresponding with Carr Riggs Ingram last week, and they're still finishing their draft report, so we have not received the draft report yet. I expect it latter part of this week, hopefully, and we would be able to present that in September, but we do not have it yet. So I know that's been, several people have asked about the status of that, so I wanted to provide an update on that. The second item I wanted to update with the last board meeting, we talked about presenting an update on our current grant funding applications. We do have 2 current grant applications that are being prepared. Santa Rosa County has taken the lead on both of these. They actually are coordinating an effort with us, Pace Water System, City of Gulf Breeze, as well as the county, and kind of coordinating one application. The first is a resiliency grant. It's part of the state of Florida's Resiliency and Coastal Protection Grant Program. And basically that provides for improvements in low-lying areas or areas that are subject to storm surge. So we proposed 2 lift stations as part of this grant. The first is in the Magnolia Harbor subdivision. The other is in the Sandy Beach subdivision. These are both lift stations that are located south of 98 right on the Sound. They're in a low-lying area. And the idea would be to raise the wet well, the top of the wet well, as well as the electrical controls, and be able to get some grant money to do that so that, you know, if there was a storm or a flooding situation, these would be protected a little bit more. The current grant amount application is $230,000, and there is an in-kind match, which we would be able to use a good part of our Messie's engineering time for our in-kind match. That is in the process of being submitted, I believe, at the end of this month. The second active application we're putting together is a septic to sewer grant application. I know most of the board's familiar with those. I think we have an existing one in for, I believe, for Robodall Estates. I think that one's around $2 million. We've not heard back on that. This particular application would be for a phase of the Tom King Bayou project. That's like a large area that we have broken out in about 7-8 phases to sewer all of that. We're still in the process of preparing this application. We think it's going to be on the order of a $1 million grant application, and we're still determining our kind of match requirements. So that one's still in process, but we've got good coordination with the county, and we're hopeful that we can get some grant money out of one or both of these. So more information to follow on those.
All right, any questions for Mr. Krigler?
Mr. President, I do have a request. Whenever staff, if we could direct staff, whenever they do receive that draft report on the forensic audit, to email it to the board of directors when they receive it. Not wait until next month.
Yep, that's...
Well, no, I wasn't suggesting you
Yeah.
would.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So the next time the board meets before we can discuss it.
Yeah, no, I mean, but whenever you get it,
Absolutely.
forward it to us.
Oh, absolutely, I would.
Okay.
That's the intention. We actually discussed that earlier today.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the intention is to, whenever
Yeah, I
we
was-
receive it, to forward it to board
We were
members. I'm
hoping to
good with
have it
that.
by this meeting,
Absolutely.
but it didn't come in
Yeah.
as expected.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that I would sit on.
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Just, no, I hear you.
Okay, next item is the water quality update. There were some concerns at our last meeting about our water quality results, and Mr. Krigler has a presentation on that.
Yeah, so just a little update here regarding our drinking water quality. As Director Miller mentioned, there was some comments at last month's meeting about several constituents in our water. So in your board packet, you have the 2022 Consumer Confidence Report. This is a report that we publish annually. It's required by the state. Available on our website. I think we may even have copies in the back. That really provides all the information on our drinking water quality. I did want to kind of just give a real brief overview. This is probably old information for most of you. So the levels we're trying to stay within are the MCL. That's the maximum contaminant level. That's the last column of numbers. So those are the levels that are set by EPA. That's part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And that program is administered at the state level by DEP. So that's who we deal with from a regulatory perspective on our drinking water, is the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. At last month's meeting, reference was made to some third-party health guidelines for certain contaminants. Now, we can't speak to that. You know, we don't know what the basis for those guidelines are. So we want to point out that these are the levels that we monitor to, and that just reiterate that we're in compliance with all the parameters on this table. So I know, Donna, if you have any questions for Donna, she handles our sampling protocol, so she understands the frequency and when we sample for which constituent. But once again, just wanted to reiterate that we're in compliance. We have really good quality drinking water. As you know, majority comes from Fairpoint, the remainder from our wells down here in the system. So we think it's important to reiterate that when comments are made.
So Jeff, just to be clear, this is available for our members on our website somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
So they can go and find this, and it's to...
That's right, and we publish it every year.
Yeah, every member gets a copy of
Yeah,
that
these sent out,
every year.
Some people forget what they get in the mail.
If,
It goes in a garbage can.
if I'm wrong, Jeff, you or one of you guys correct me, but the first two items on here, erosion of natural deposits, that's kind of our argument at the well field protection area whenever people wanted to fill it in with debris. That the decay of that debris is what causes those two to fall out of line. Is that right? Or?
You're talking about,
Alpha emitters and radio.
So radio.
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily
Well,
that's related to
erosion
bone
and
condition.
digging in the
deposits.
ground can cause the release of radium-226 and 228, but they're naturally occurring. They're not created by anything put in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the items that were raised as an issue, such as trihalomethanes, nitrate, arsenic, those kind of things are definitely related to organic material that could be placed back into and fill an open pit. Trihalomethanes are created by the reaction of chlorine with organics, and of course nitrates and arsenic, we all know that they're naturally occurring in vegetation. So, yes.
Okay. Any other comments on this? All right, all good information. Glad to see that our water quality is where it needs to be. All right, so next up is finance. We've got our June quarterly financials. Mr. Krigler?
Yes, thank you. You'll notice we've still got our new Edmonds reports in here. I know I don't think everyone's super thrilled with the look of them, but we've been working with Edmonds to try to optimize that. You'll also notice we do have the year-to-date budget information, and it is through Q2, so it is depicting where we're at halfway through the year. So I think it's a good look at where we're at relative to being halfway done. And I think all those numbers are pretty in line, both on the revenue and expense side, pretty close to 50%. So that's all tracking well. Barbara, you want to add anything on the actual statements?
No, you covered it well. Overall, we're right at 50% on the revenue and 47% on the expenses. So we're right in line with the budget. You will next month for July, we're going to start accruing the 401k employer match. So instead of the quarterly payments, you'll see that monthly. And working on the pension as well, once we can kind of get the annual pension payment in line, start accruing that monthly as well.
Okay. Any questions on the financials? If not, I'd like to get a motion to approve the financials as submitted.
Make a motion to approve the June quarterly 23 financials.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes or abstentions? Motion carries. Directors update. We have our committee updates. First off, Finance Committee, Joe Campbell.
I'll let Daryl and Don go first, and I have a couple things after that. So, Don, you want to do CIP?
Sure. CIP, no surprise, we're running behind because a few things have slipped. Eglin for one, Highway 98, 87 lift stations for another. And we still don't have our rationale for when we replace trucks or don't replace trucks, and that's a big part of this year. And when that comes out, there might be a bunch of ordering going on, but that's not ready yet. There are a few things that have gone over a little bit, and one, what were the collection system repairs, both wastewater and general. We only had one light item instead of two for some reason, so we're going to readjust some of the fundings between those two lines where one doesn't show $100,000 over and the other shows $100,000 under, just for that. Other than that, unless you remember something else, Joe, in particular you wanted to talk about, I'm good.
No, but the overall CIP budget for this year will not, just because of the repairs and how it aligned. So unless the board feels so, we're just going to, the maximum number we're not going to exceed, but we might need to take 10,000 from here and put it there. So I don't know if I need a board now, but we can do that without coming back to the board since the budget was approved, as long as we're into the final number. Kind of asking that as a question.
Yeah, unless something drastic happens, we're not going to get anywhere near the total budget as a single number.
Yeah, we're
on
talking
either one.
And it's mainly in the maintenance, so if something breaks, that's where it would have to go. So
I would think as long as you stay within the approval authority, you have a line item, so if you go $25,000 over that, I would think you should have to come back to the board. Other than that, I don't think you should.
Right.
That'd be my recommendation.
I would think that, I like it 25,000 for, but just like you
Moving
said,
from
any
one
line item, maximum 25,000, I don't care. I mean, our CIP budget is what, 5 million, $10 million?
Yeah.
If we're gonna take 3 million from here and put it over here because
No.
we're short, I want that to come before the board.
What I meant was any individual line item greater than a $25,000 overage, you need to come to the board.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to bring that to the board.
All righty. Budget.
Daryl, anything for the budget side?
On the, our budget committee, it's the end of the quarter in here, so you see the quarter, we're right at 50% on all the categories, 50 on one, maybe 51 on the other, so we're tracking right within budget on everything.
Awesome.
The one thing I wanted to broach, since we're approaching budget season, and I know the last board didn't have an appetite for it, but I would like this board to reconsider the pay banding. We've always had a concern with our wages and make sure within the budget, but this is one of the few organizations that doesn't have a pay band. So if I commit at a position, let's take clerk, and I'm in that position for 20 years, and I keep getting every pay raise, but I haven't taken additional education, no responsibility, and at the end of the day, you're so out of whack that you're paying for a Maserati when really all you have is, and I apologize, that's, human beings are not cars. So we talked about it, so what I'd like to propose is we ask the staff to come back with a proposal for pay banding, and as part of the budget process, this board look to approve or disapprove that as a moving forward. And that's my motion. So we ask the staff to look at it as part of the budgeting process to implement a pay band.
I'll second the motion for discussion. You're talking about having pay bands across
For
organizations
positions.
for if you come in as prepare for IT repair.
Just like any other industry, just like the
I don't know
civil
about any other
service,
industry,
just
but
like.
certainly the one we were in. We had pay bands, and you were in that position. There was an experience level, education level, and responsibility level. You hit the top. You were at the top. You weren't automatically going over it without switching jobs. Yeah, I'm in favor of the concept.
The only concern I have is minimum wage. The citizens of Florida voted to increase minimum wage every year for 5 years until it hits, $15 an hour. And, we've got to be able to keep up with that, keep our, in order to retain employees, we've got to be able to offer a competitive wage. And if minimum wage, keeps going up and their pay doesn't, go up, then that's an issue. So,
Well,
we can
Florida
discuss
Rural
it.
Water, American Water, and there's a whole lot of organizations that are in our business that have these things, and we just, staff tailors it to the local, and I get minimum wage, and I get that, which is why, as part of the budgeting process, staff, and it could be 15,000, 20, I have no preconceived notion, I just know we keep talking about concerns about our wage budget and how much it increases. This, including grandfather, right? So I'm asking, as part of the budgeting, that staff looks at all the options and do what they do, and then come back to the board to either approve or not.
I think it's a good idea to have staff do the exercise and see what it comes back at. I have my opinions on whether or not we should actually implement something like that. I think that, I understand that you have a position that maybe have an upper limit of X amount of dollars, and we've got somebody that's been working in that position for 30 years, and through cost of living adjustments and everything else, maybe they're above that figure. Maybe they're considerably above that figure. But I also believe that 30-year person probably carries a lot more knowledge than that minimum wage person that you're going to hire to replace them. And whenever you put that pay band on the person that's been here for 30 years, they might go down the street and get a job paying more.
Right, and as the case is, we have rival water systems that steal our folk, and we try to steal back, and we're not always successful. So I'm not, I agree
So I
with
think
all
it's a
that.
good exercise.
Exactly. That's all I'm asking for.
And I would certainly say that everybody that's, so anybody happens to be over whatever we decide would come to would be grandfathered in. It wouldn't make people take a pay cut.
Oh, yeah.
That would not.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor say aye. Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries.
Sorry to hit you that way.
So what I envision is tying that to the job description, and it'd be part of the job description
Yeah.
of the position.
I think that's really something that's part of the budget process, but specifically to address the pay band issue, I think is something we could take a look at.
On that note, maybe staff in conjunction with that could take a review of our organizational chart and make sure that an organization of our size is adequately staffed and not overstaffed in these areas.
I think we do.
I'd agree
I think that's
also,
been done.
I mean, I'm not sure if Darrell meant this also, but not just the numbers, but the levels.
Yes.
Do we have enough senior people or junior people? What is that organizational structure that we should have?
We're going to talk about that in a few, right?
That's right. The chart's on there. I mean, we empower our CEO to come to us with those kind of recommendations, and we have that on our agenda.
Okay. But that's all I had from finance.
Okay, thank you. The Eglin reuse project, the first phase did go out for rebid. I think at the pre-bid meeting, there were 4 interested parties there. When does that close? You know?
The 24th, I believe, we opened those bids.
Okay, so those bids are opened on the 24th, so that's coming up fairly soon. And I think Mr. Dunaway has an update for us on the assessment or appraisal process.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. So we have set on the docket the order of taking hearing, and that will be on November the 27th, 2023 at 9 a.m. That'll be before Judge Duncan, Circuit Judge in Santa Rosa County. The order of taking hearing is that hearing in which we will present the case as to the public purpose of the project and the need for the right-of-way and the value for those easements that are being acquired by Santa Rosa County. Remember, this is a Santa Rosa County process, and that is we're working through the process for them. As part of that, we have an update. So we'll have Phil will be available to testify at that hearing, as we will identify which of the contractors who did the report and the right-of-way study. And we will also have Mr. Sean Brantley, who you earlier approved as your appraiser. And recall that the easements were appraised as of March of 2022. And because of the delay in getting the signed easement back, that caused us to, we had already started that process. So we have to have, as part of the order of taking hearing, an updated appraisal for those easements. And I have Mr. Brantley's cost estimate for that. It does fall in the CEO's approval authority, but I would let you know that he will be available to testify, which is critical, that he will have the updates done by November, which is critical, and that cost will be $24,000.
Okay. And what was the original cost? 40?
48, I believe.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dunaway. Any questions on the Eglin project? All right, Club at Hidden Creek Management Board, Mr. Krigler.
Yes. So we are happy to report our event room renovation at the club is completed. We had an event there on August 9th, and we received some positive feedback. So we're glad to get that project done. We don't have our full total yet because we use some in-house labor, and we have to determine how much that final amount was, but we believe it was well below 25,000. It was a good project, and it looks great, and we think we got a pretty good value on it. So we're hoping that'll help with our events. So we're looking forward to that. We are halfway through the year, obviously, with the Hidden Creek financials as well. The club's had a good year on the revenue side, showing a net income of $108,000 for the year. So we're hoping to build on that. That's all I have for the club. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, moving on to Fairpoint, Mr. Grigler again.
Yeah, just one item on Fairpoint. Last week we opened the bids for the materials solicitation for our 3 booster pump stations that Fairpoint will be installing, and we'll award that at the next Fairpoint meeting.
Okay, and then municipal engineering, Mr. Phillips.
We did have a board meeting at the end of July. The primary purpose was to approve the tax returns and discuss the agenda item that's actually on the agenda tonight, the purchase of the I&I equipment. The tax returns actually weren't available. This board's going to approve them anyway, so we didn't feel that was much of an issue. But that was generally what discussed. And of course, the purchase of the large item is on the agenda for tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, that ends our committee updates. As we just spoke about, the org chart, Mr. Grigler.
Yeah, so tab 5 includes the version of the draft org chart with no names. And, you know, so for our personnel discussion at the last, I guess, executive session, this contains the filled positions as well as the vacant positions. And we may or may not fill these vacant positions. Some of these are still being analyzed, and we talked about that a little bit at our executive session as well. So these are really at least for the near term, these would be the maximum amount of positions that we envision needing. So based on that, we're asking for approval of this version of the org chart going forward.
Someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
The motion is to approve the org chart as submitted to the board. Do we have any discussion on it?
Yeah, I've got a question too. So in our last session, there were a few positions that were, I'll say, iffy for lack of another term, or are there any positions that we looked at before that are not on this page now?
No, none have been added. So some of what I presented at the executive session, I kind of simplified it, and this just includes filled and vacant. And I would just add some of the vacant ones we're looking at, and we covered that in the executive session. Some of those may not need to be filled immediately, but we would have them, you know, for the future. So, like I said, this would be the maximum amount of positions currently, until we would come back and ask for more.
And just to confirm, this is going to be reviewed annually in conjunction with the budget process
At a minimum, yes.
as a minimum, so any changes that you recommend will come with the budget process?
Right, and this is how we roll up our wages for the budgeting process.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
We talked about combining some of the responsibilities also. A couple of these jobs.
That should be reflected here, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? I'll call a vote. All in favor of approving the org chart as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. All righty, we have our proposed update to the Articles of Incorporation from 1970 with one amendment to them. Mr. Grigler.
Yeah, so last week we had a workshop to kick off or begin the discussion of changing the bylaws, and I think we all agreed the first step was to resolve the current discrepancy between the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws. Our legal counsel provided a recommendation for how we resolve that inconsistency. That language is attached in, let's see, that is tab 6. So that's the language that Will has proposed. And as changing for the Articles of Incorporation. I believe there's some additional thoughts on that, though, before that's called to a vote.
Okay. I'd just like to say we had a very productive workshop where we helped to kick all this around and determine, what's the best way moving forward to get to a bylaws change, which is our ultimate goal. And the first change is to get the Articles of Incorporation changed, and this is the language that would change those that would enable us to change the bylaws. So, the goal is to come up with a process that will, allow us to make changes to the bylaws, but not just on a whim. We want a good representation of our membership to vote on that and not have it be 20 people. We want a percentage of our membership, and I think what we had discussed is that, based on our normal participation in elections, around 5% is a threshold that we would like to see happen. So that's the threshold that is included in the Articles of Incorporation change. If we choose to vote on that tonight, that we would have at least 5% of our membership show up to vote on it. But we do have some other ideas on this, so I'm opening it up for discussion.
Personally, I think 5% is too low. I think 5% can be manipulated. I think that, I was talking to Don before the meeting, and I'll throw out there, for instance, you probably got 1,000 golfers out there at the golf course. And if I got with one of my buddies at the golf course and said, hey, look, we want to go ahead and put a bylaw in here that says Highland Bar Water System can never close or sell the club at Hidden Creek. There's 1,000 of us, more than 5%. We can pass it.
You've got to have a 50% plus one vote of the membership.
I get all the 1,000. No, you don't. Not in our new scenario. You have to have 5%, which is 800 and some odd.
50. Well, it's 50% plus one, and at least 5% of the membership have to show up and vote. So we're looking at 900 people have to show up and vote, and
Has to vote,
451 would have to vote, assuming we have 18,000 members, just under
Right,
that.
but if you have 1,000 people that are personally interested in it, or, I'm using a personal interest standpoint, I can think of reasons that people would have a financial interest in changing our bylaws. And if you set it at 5%, it's just too low. It can be manipulated. It can be gamed. If you set it at 15 or 25%, then your numbers are too large for that. So I think that 5% is just too low.
We need to make it something that is realistically feasible for us to get there, and
Here's why.
We haven't changed them in 53 years. I know we've ignored them, but we haven't changed them in 53 years. It needs to be something that doesn't change often. I think 5% makes it to where you're going to change it quite a few times over the years. I just personally think it should be a good bit higher than 5%.
I'm going to say I think there has been a change in 53 years because the version that we're working on is dated 1986. We can't find
The bylaws.
the bylaws, right?
Okay. There were 3 changes, I believe.
But we don't have the history of how they were changed and when they were changed, all of that.
Also, some of our members, unfortunately, it wasn't a very well-attended special session, open session still. Wish it had been, but, we had numbers from the past elections. We're on a very busy year. 500 people, pushing like 3% of our members came out to vote. 3%. So we were thinking 5%. We've never seen it. So, and we wanted something that would be a leap. However, I'll admit, Daryl's example, I could see happening, whether or not, but I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember between the incorporation and the bylaws, or maybe both, which ones are actually presented to the board to vote and actually approve, even if 451 members approved what was on the ballot. So I got that mixed up, and I know
The
Darrell
way-
and I aren't necessarily seeing eye to eye on that either, but
The way I remember from our meeting, and Will, people correct me if I'm wrong, but after the vote is taken, it still comes back to the board whether to allow the change. Is that not a true statement?
That is true for a change to the Articles of Incorporation.
Okay.
That is not true for
Not
the
true for the
bylaws.
bylaws, okay.
It's almost, it's like a conundrum, because, you know, we've seen a couple of things that we want to change, and, you know, proxy voting being one of them. And so we want to make it, the threshold low enough where we actually could get it changed, but Darrell made a great point at the last meeting, is what if you have a board that's not looking out for the best interest of the customers and the members? And if the threshold is too low, somebody could manipulate it. And I'm starting to think that 5% myself is a little bit too low as well. So it's tough. It's a tough call, because we want to get this done. We want to make sure it gets done, but I don't want to leave it open for a board that somebody on the board at that time has, you know, personal reasons for changing bylaws. And so that's kind of my view. I've been meditating on this a lot.
And I have one question. This is a question for our attorney. At our meeting, it was mentioned that, I know everybody wants to get rid of proxy voting, but we have it now. So, that being said, our bylaws allow for proxy voting. Florida statute says that if you have proxy voting, you have proxy voting. So, how can we ban proxy voting in something like this?
Well, we've seen examples from the other two water companies that changed theirs, and one specifically says there are no proxy votes.
Okay, but I'm asking,
You talking about for this vote?
Currently, our bylaws say that we have proxy voting. So until we change that, we have proxy voting.
Sure.
Okay, so the question is proxy voting allowed to change the bylaws? And if not, why is it not?
Okay, so the question is, how do you amend the bylaws? And the bylaws tell you how to amend them, and that's in Article 13 of your bylaws. And in Article 13 of the bylaws, it says that the bylaws may be repealed or amended by a vote of the majority of the members present at any regular meeting of the corporation or at any special meeting of the corporation called for that purpose, except so long as the indebtedness and that exception. So you can't use proxies to vote, because your amendments, your bylaws specifically say that the amendment is made by a majority of the members present at any regular meeting.
Okay.
Or a special meeting.
All right, called for that purpose.
Okay. I just know in the past, when they did amend it, I'd been told that they used proxies.
Like you said, they didn't always follow the bylaw.
I know.
Well,
So the reason I'm kind of like the 5% is I think the threshold is high enough, but the margin of error, statistical deviation, says 3%. So unless it's 50-49 with 850 people, you're going to get the same statistical outcome as if all 17,000. Right? With a 3% margin of error. That's why 5% to me, that 850 number in this case, is fairly reasonable, but not as easy as you think.
I understand that.
Especially since we've only had 1 year where 800 people actually voted. The average is 500.
I think that the only question that I have on I understand the statistical side of it, and if everything was indifferent and you were looking at it like that, I'm looking at it from a standpoint is if you have an interested outside party that wants to manipulate it, then your statistics don't apply, because you've got somebody trying to game the system.
It's still going to be something that's published, and, there'll be news articles about it. It'll be out there for, probably several months before the vote actually takes place, and you still have to have, 5% of the membership, which is, over 850 now, and you would have to have 50% plus one of the people that actually show up vote to change the bylaws, they'd have to be in favor of that change. So, I think the 5% is still a pretty tough threshold to meet, as Director Campbell just pointed out. We typically don't get 5% show up on election day to make those changes. Any other board discussion? I'm going to call on Mr. Cosby. Would you?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As y'all know, I was here for the first hour, then I had to leave, go to the HOA meeting, but I did watch the rest of the video when I got home. And I'm not sure, everything I heard about wanting to change this is specific to the proxy voting. I didn't hear any other specific item that you guys wanted to change in the bylaws. Is that correct?
No, there's other items.
There are other items, but we focused that workshop on what do we need to do to get to the point where we can change the bylaws, and that requires changes to the language in the Articles of Incorporation.
That's where the concern is, because as far as the proxy voting, I'll say this. The major problem with proxy voting last year was because of a few of the board members. It was abused, okay? And I know why now y'all want to change it. You want to change the proxy voting. And if you want to change it for this coming year, you guys all need to pledge that you will not be involved in proxy voting. That will take care of it for this year. Now, the next year, of course, you've got to go to the election to change this, and then that won't happen for the next year. But you guys could all pledge before the election that you will not be involved in proxy voting, and it takes care of it for this coming election. Now I'm going back to the main concern is if you change the Articles of Incorporation to start fiddling with the bylaws, and it's not specific to one thing, then you've opened up Pandora's box. And that goes to what Mr. Lynchard was talking about, and was talking about for the special meeting.
So, Kurt.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll pledge because I only had 3. Somebody else had 60.
I had one.
So, but the point is, Articles of Incorporation would be brought before the members at this year's meeting. We'd still have to proxy vote. Proxy vote would still be for this year. It's still on play.
Right.
After this year, then there'd be a special meeting to discuss the bylaws that the members.
For the next, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to bring it is, right now, the bylaws are easy. This group here could change the bylaws today. There's 10 people here. What we're trying to get to is a level that the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws match, so.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure we're on the same page.
It's just, being present for the first hour and then watching the last 55 minutes at home, it was all, spearheaded to proxies. It wasn't, and so now, do I have to add, so I'll just go ahead and ask, what's the other things you guys want to change?
Well, and it's not just up to us. These things were written in 1986, and there's language in there that just is not relative anymore regarding the way we operate, a lot of things. So, I don't see this change to the bylaws happening overnight. It's going to take, probably several months of meetings and discussing what is the gold standard of a set of bylaws for a water system that we should adopt.
I'll tell you another one for me is defining a member in good standing. A member in good standing, according to our bylaws, is anybody.
Maybe.
So it doesn't mean if I've had a temper fee or whatever the case may be. So that's where we're trying to get to.
Well, maybe you guys can write it to it with whatever you're coming up with for. I know you're working with what the percentage is going to be, and I know, and y'all been hammered ad nauseum, and I understand it's difficult. But if you target what you really want to do in the bylaws by changing the incorporation first, and you're specific to what you're going to do in the bylaws, you may get a huge turnout to get what you want done because that's what the members want. okay? But if you're gonna change it to where all of a sudden, okay, now we're gonna do a special meeting, we decided we're gonna do this that nobody's heard about before, that's where the problem starts.
Well, that's why we put that threshold of 5% in there. It's gonna take at
Well,
least
see,
5% of the people knowing about it and showing up, caring enough to show up
I
and vote on it.
understand, I'm just saying, whatever you're coming up with tonight for the threshold, you need to be specific about what you want to do the bylaws at the election in January. That's what I'm getting at. So everybody's clear and they know what they're coming to vote for during that day.
The election in January is gonna be only to change the Articles of Corporation. It's got nothing to do with any change.
I know, but see, you're, still, you understand what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And I'll make one other comment. We have to allow, per our bylaws, we have to allow proxy voting until we change the bylaws and get rid of that.
Right,
So-
and I'm taking care of that tonight, if you guys will pledge that you will not be involved, you got, that, not all of you.
Let me finish my
Some of you
comment.
were involved, okay, because I was involved in it too, trying to stop it,
Mhm.
all right, last year. And y'all all know, so all you gotta do is pledge, we won't be involved in proxy voting, and I think you will have taken care of it for this coming election.
Here's what I was gonna say, is that we can pledge that I'm not gonna go out and solicit proxies, but the proxy has to be allowed, and there's
I didn't-
nothing to prevent somebody from naming myself or Bill or any one of our directors as their proxy. It doesn't even have to be a director. It could
It
be
doesn't,
any
right, it doesn't, I'm going back to what happened last year. Last year, it was abused by several board members.
It's been abused in many years.
Well, and as far as me doing it, or, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about you guys. See, so,
What's your level for abuse? It was, my understanding was like 91 proxy votes.
I got 91 proxy votes, okay? I got 0 absentees. So I'm good with getting rid of proxies, as long as you will go ahead and do away with absentee ballots also. Because there were more absentee ballots than there were proxies. So if that's gonna be
Well, and see-
the case, then let's get rid of both of them.
and because you targeted it during the workshop meeting, that's why I'm bringing it up as the specific item that you guys have targeted. So I'm just saying, you know, I'm gonna trust you if you pledge, I'm not gonna be involved in it.
The reason we focused on that is because that's what members at the election, Mr. Pullman got up here and said the same thing, so that's where a lot of that is coming.
So that will solve your issue, the issue, if it's, you know, and I think it is an issue, because you guys have hammered it to death. I think that will take care of it for this year's election. And then moving forward, you know, I've already told you my opinion, and, but anyway, thanks.
If we're gonna change it for the long term, though, we have to make a mechanism
I know,
to
I'm
do
scared
that.
of the long term. I'm scared of what you want to do for the long term.
But if we, then if we do what you say, which I'm certainly willing to do, but if we do what you say, that only solves it for this election. The next board can then not have to pledge, and the proxies will still be in there. Whereas if we change the articles.
Not if you're specific on the articles of incorporation, why you're going to change the bylaws for that next year's, the election in what, 25, whatever it is. Solve the problem.
But it still doesn't stop anybody else running for the board that's not on the board from getting proxies.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, they
And
can
I don't
still get
care.
as many
I don't
proxies
care
as they
about what they
want.
do.
Right,
I
but
mean,
then they'll
the
win and be on the
problem-
board,
right.
yeah.
The problem was board members, not all the board members, a few of the board members. That's all I'm saying. And everybody was, you know, everybody was upset. You know? Well, yeah, except for Darrell. He wasn't upset.
All right, so we don't actually have a motion yet, unless I missed something.
No, I did want to throw one out that pops into head whenever he says something specific in the bylaws that's outdated that needs to be changed. And one thing is our process for approving the annual budget. Currently, our bylaws say that we have to approve our annual budget in our January meeting, which is on the second or third week of January. So we have to operate from January 1st until the annual meeting on something, but it's not an approved budget because the bylaws say we don't approve the budget until the annual meeting. we need to change those to make it to where we approve the budget in the November meeting.
And see, that's another issue.
Because if
That's
you
where
could
you
actually
can
get
be
to the,
specific
because
what
you,
you're changing.
because just because you presented at the annual meeting, somebody might vote it down one year. So now you don't even have a budget after the annual meeting and you're past the middle of January.
That's the chance you're taking.
Yeah.
And another issue is the audit. It says in the bylaws that the audit has to be done in January. Well, it's not ready in January. We never get a draft audit till April. So that's another thing that has to be changed in the bylaws. But again, it's the chicken and the egg thing. Unless we figure out how we can change the bylaws, you have to change the articles of incorporation in order to be able to do that.
Right, okay, now you've given 3 specifics.
But you're not gonna put those in the articles of incorporation.
No, I think what he's saying is we need to articulate that to members of why we're moving forward with this.
That too, and I don't know if that's true, Counselor, what do you say?
What's the question, Mr.?
To change the articles of incorporation as a specific, we've got 3 specifics in the room now that you guys have talked about needs to be changed. And I agree with you, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Can you do it to where that's the only 3 things they can change in the bylaws? You can't write it that way in the articles of incorporation?
I wouldn't advise it, but the board can do whatever the board pleases.
So they can do that. That's where you're gonna get your maximum membership coming to vote, when they see specifics. They're not gonna vote for this if you can't answer the questions. And so far, I've gotten you to give me 3 specifics, and I agree with all of them.
So I could address what you're saying, Kurt. We haven't given you 3 specifics. You've had 3 people mention 3 items. You don't know that 4 of us want to change it.
Right.
Well, yeah,
There's a lot of and we've not had any of those discussions. I couldn't tell you right now, there's a couple, yes, but somebody might be thinking of something that I've not heard of that I'd be in favor of or I would oppose. I just want to be upfront, Kurt. Tonight, I would not be in favor of putting in the articles of incorporation what we want to change in the bylaws. Speaking for myself, I'm not ready to answer that. I just cannot answer that, and I doubt I'd be ready. I mean, we'd have to have 3 or 4 sessions to come up with that. So I just want to be upfront with you.
The other thing you can do is you list what you're going to do. You don't say how you're going to change it until until it's to the meeting. It's on the agenda for possible action. Okay, that's how I would handle it. You've got 3 that, yeah, you need to discuss the other 2 because you didn't discuss those at all at the workshop. The other 2, it was mainly talking about the election and proxies.
And those are just examples, though. There's more than just 2 more. I mean, if you look through it, we've looked at it. I've looked at them in depth.
They almost need a
There's a lot of
total
them to be
rewrite.
updated. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, because you guys already know, you hammered it for over an hour at the workshop. You want it to be difficult, but you don't want to be so difficult that it won't pass. But when you don't tell people what you're really going to do, you won't pass it. I don't care how easy you make the votes. It will not pass. It won't. See, y'all know that. Y'all know that.
All right, well, we do have a recommendation for language in the Articles of Incorporation. Does anyone want to make a motion to get us to a point where we can change the bylaws?
I do have one other discussion on the proposal, the Article 9. Right. So when it says, as shown by the corporate records on the day the votes are counted. So that infers to me that this total of 5% is with absentee ballots.
Yes.
So not on the day of the, right? Is it as shown by the corporate records on the day the vote, which was my question before in the special meeting of all 850 people in one building are not, it's just not going to happen, never, ever, 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 as Taylor Swift says. So does this, the way it's written, does that include absentee ballots as the vote? I mean,
It doesn't, because it says you have to be present at the meeting in order to change it. Now, if you change
right,
one of
so
the ballots for a ballot
currently,
change.
if I understand it, again, currently, if this was the annual meeting, based on what the lawyer has said, this these people here could vote to make these amendments. That's what we're going for this year. Right? That's my understanding, that using the precedent and the fact that they did it with 27 votes in whatever year that was, this is how we changed the Articles of Incorporation at this at this election this year. The people that are present, what we're trying to do is make it this. So it's instead of 27, it's
For the bylaw.
no, for the Articles of Incorporation.
The bylaws.
For the bylaw. These needs to become the article of incorporation.
Okay, because I've been assuming it, we're doing for both. So this is not that.
This is to bring the Articles of Incorporation, to eliminate the language that prevents us from being able to make a bylaws change.
Right.
And it creates a way to change the bylaws without, but as we discussed in the meeting, establishing a minimum threshold of membership participating in the election to vote on it.
Right.
To
Yeah,
vote to change the bylaws.
Right, to be clear, under modern interpretation of Articles of Incorporation and bylaws, you do not want your Articles of Incorporation to limit drastically your ability to have bylaws and amend those bylaws. Your Articles of Incorporation, however, written in 1970, have a severe limitation on your ability to amend your bylaws, making it virtually impossible, as evidenced by the fact that they have not been amended that we understand since 1986, and even that amendment, we're not certain how it was done because our records are not clear. So typically, your Articles of Incorporation would not offer such a limitation. The idea that was presented to you at the workshop gave you several options to eliminate that restriction. And in the discussion, you made there was a consensus that resulted in this language that you still have a limiter, that is the 5%, but that was a limiter that was at least not 50%, which is what essentially is in there now. So that's what is happening here. And this only affects the Articles of Incorporation, but it affects them in the specific instance of how you can amend or not amend your bylaws. The process of amending or not amending your bylaws would be a future event if you eliminated this limiting factor or you adjusted this limiting factor. That's what's happening and is proposed. And the language that was presented in my memo of August the 10th that's in your package is the language, the consensus language that this board came up with at the workshop, with the exception, and I added this because staff has to know, because you have a percentage of a number that changes potentially daily. The number of members change potentially daily, so we have to know on what day we're calculating the 5%. So I put the parenthetical as shown by the corporate records on the day of the vote, because otherwise we'll have a question about how many members do we actually have and, you know, what's 5% of that. So I'm trying to make it as clear as possible.
We, at the, at the annual election, we will have, you'd have to use the, it seems like you would have to use the amount of members at the end of November. And the reason I say that is because memberships are approved, canceled, or transferred by action of the board. And the last action the board would take would be at the December meeting for the November memberships, which were, you know, created, transferred, or canceled. So it would be seems like that would be the official number for any vote, correct?
That's a good point, but I'm wondering, could we at the annual meeting approve any update to the membership, you know?
If you become a member though, like 1 January, you can vote in the annual meeting. So it has to be the day of the annual
Seems
meeting.
like
I would
the
think.
end of the-
So we discussed, and I don't know if this is where the day of voting came into it, but we discussed that we wouldn't necessarily always only vote at an annual meeting. That we could have special sessions throughout the year, even one. And at some point, you'd have to say, okay, how many members do we have? And it would be whatever day we picked as the voting day. It would, how many members we have then, and it's not necessarily always going to be the end of November. I mean, to Darrell's point, that's correct for annual meeting, but any other month, no.
Well, it's really not correct because you have the members that join. And I know they're not approved, but we've never turned them down. I mean, if they're a member, you're a member. If you're a member, you're entitled to vote, whether the board's approved you to be a member or not.
Which is why I wrote it as shown on the corporate records. The corporate records are maintained in the course of the corporation. The staff has those corporate records, and I did it on the day of the vote, are counted, because as Director Lindell points out, you could have a special date that wouldn't be your January annual meeting.
But you would still have to have 5% of the membership show up
Yeah.
to that
Correct.
meeting on that special day.
I just, we kind of got off here a little while ago. I believe it was Joe that mentioned that absentee ballots would be, you could use absentee ballots in this thing? Or is that going to be counted for the proxy or the bylaws, or, because we talked about everybody would have to vote on the election day. But now we're going to use absentee ballots, so you don't have to vote on an election day, or what?
Well, it has to do because of members present, the current language in the bylaws. Now, if bylaws are changed.
Yeah, if we change them, they can be anything they want to be,
anything
but
you want them to
right,
be.
but.
But right now, the current language is, it says members present.
Mhm.
And so at a meeting called for that purpose.
That's right.
So-
So absentee would not count it.
Absentee would not count.
For the change to the Articles of Incorporation at the annual meeting upcoming. That,
They would not
there is
count.
not such a limiter in the language that is presented to you for the bylaw change. You could add such a limiter, but you don't have that in there now. Right now, the language says the bylaws of the corporation shall be made, and upon a good faith notice to the members may be altered or rescinded by a vote of a majority of the members casting a vote, except that no such change shall be effective unless at least 5% of the members of the corporation, as shown by the corporate records on the day the votes are counted, participated by casting a vote. One could imagine that that's what the limiter would be. When you got to changing the bylaws, you might articulate a limit and say you can't vote absentee on the bylaws. But you could, because the limiter in the Articles of Incorporation don't prevent it.
I guess we still don't have a motion.
Sorry?
We still don't have a motion. There was never a motion made yet. We're
I'll
discussing an
move-
item doesn't have a motion.
Okay. I will move that we make the proposed changes that our attorney has written up for both Articles 9 and Article 8 of our Articles of Incorporation.
I second it.
That would be just to clarify, Article 9 and Article 10, as shown on the memo of August the 10th.
I second that.
Where I got 8.
Articles 9, I second it.
Hello.
Well, we can keep talking.
Further discussion now that we have a motion. I know we've kind of been discussing.
We've talked this thing to death.
The only discussion I have left is that 5% is too low and I can't support it.
Can you please read the changes one more time?
I'll read the proposed changes to Article 9 and Article 10. The proposed change to Article 9 is as follows. the bylaws of the corporation shall be made, and upon good faith notice to the members, may be altered or rescinded by a vote of the majority of the members casting a vote, except that no such changes shall be effective unless at least 5% of the members of the corporation, parentheses, as shown by the corporate records on the day the votes are counted, close parentheses, participated by casting a vote. Proposed change to Article 10 is to the first sentence only as follows. Amendments to these articles of incorporation may be proposed to the Board of Directors by a vote of a majority of the members casting a vote, except that no such changes shall be effective unless at least 5% of the members of the corporation, as shown by the corporate records on the day the votes are counted, participated by casting a vote.
And to be clear, the second sentence of Article 10 is not altered or changed. And directors, I remind you that that second sentence is that a majority of the members of the Board of Directors may approve, amend, or reject such proposals and shall have the final authority to adopt any amendments. Now, let me be clear that the change to Article 10 is to put you in conformance with the change to Article 9. Else, you could change the Articles of Incorporation again using the procedure that we are proposing to use in January, which is a majority of the members present at the meeting, because that is the pattern and the history of the vote as indicated and explained by the case law that we presented that led us to this option. If you don't want to change that and therefore have it, then you would not alter Article 10, such that you could do this again, next year. But we were trying to be, and that was I felt the consensus of what came out of the workshop, that we wanted to be consistent.
So the reason change Article 10 is to tighten up the fact so that they can in the future change the Articles of Incorporation.
In the Articles of
Very
Incorporation,
easily.
Article
It becomes just as
9,
hard as the bylaws.
I'm sorry to overstep. Again, in the Articles of Incorporation, Article 9 is the limitation on the amendment to the bylaws. Article 10 is how you amend the Articles of Incorporation.
And just to be perfectly clear, what we're voting on tonight is not changing the Articles of Incorporation. It's to put this language on the ballot so the members can vote to change the Articles of Incorporation, not us. Correct. Any other discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Let's do aye. Okay, so we've got 6 ayes and all.
One no.
One nay. Okay. So motion carries 6-1. All right. Next up is our admin, the 2024 annual board election timeline that was presented to the board. Mr. Krigler and Ms. Buckholz.
Yeah, so this was put on the agenda 2 weeks ago, essentially. However, it was acted upon at Thursday's workshop. So the board did approve this. We do have 2 minor comments that may justify maybe amending that motion. If you look on Exhibit J in the back of this is tab 7 under the absentee ballot procedure. Item B mentions a question about updating the Articles of Incorporation. That is incorrect, and that would not be part of the absentee ballot process. When we drafted this, we thought that it might be. So that would need to be amended. Once again, that's Exhibit J, item B on the absentee ballot procedure.
Where is that at?
So, yeah, they're not numbered, unfortunately. You start flipping through the packet. The exhibits are numbered, they're numbered in red at the top right of the,
Is that it?
of each page.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So if you look in the bottom left of Exhibit J, it's at an absentee ballot procedure. Item B.
Page 82 of the packet.
Yeah, it reads, answer the proposed question about updating the articles of incorporation with a yes or no. That
That wouldn't
it
be on
needs
the
to be
absentee
stricken,
ballot.
because once again, at the time we first drafted this, we thought this would be part of the ballot procedure, the absentee ballot, but it's not.
Board members, the reason of that is recall that in the vote of the members, as from the language that you're presenting them to, there will have to be present and voting. That's why they won't be able to absentee. They can absentee vote for directors, but in order to vote for or against changing the articles of incorporation, they must be present to vote. Because it's a majority, right, it's a majority of the members present and voting is the language.
So I move that we strike that sentence B, Exhibit J, under absentee ballot procedure. We strike that completely out. Is that what we need, or we need to approve the entire?
Well, we need to approve it with that change, I think.
Yeah, we got maybe two more comments as well. I believe we only approved the timeline at the workshop, so we need to approve the documents and process as presented, which that's what this says. And then I believe we did want to ask about the candidate questionnaire. I think, Amber, you had a question about that. You want?
Yeah, so we typically publish the bios for the candidates. And this year we've been including the candidate questionnaire. So the question to the board would be, do you want that also to be published with the candidates' bios, the questionnaire and their answers, or do you just want that published to the website?
I'd like to have that as a separate motion, but yes, I do think we need to vote to either do that or not do that. I'd like to approve the packet with the recommended change, and then have a separate vote for the whether or not to include the questionnaire.
So is that the only recommended change to the packet?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the packet with the one recommended change.
There you go.
Second.
Motion and a second. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor of motion to approve the packet with the change, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Now, we need a motion regarding what information we're going to publish on the candidates. Are we going to just publish the bios, or are we going to publish the bios and the questionnaire?
I think the questionnaire would,
I was going to say, currently the questionnaire is currently put onto the website, but it's not published in local paper.
Last year, I don't think it was done at either.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
I don't think that the candidates' questionnaires and their answers weren't published to either place.
I don't think that we had a problem last year. I know that I was one of the ones that voted it down last year. But I didn't necessarily have a problem with putting that on the website or publishing it. Still don't have a problem with it this year. What I had a problem with it last year was we were going to change the rules after everybody had already turned them in. So after you'd told everybody that, hey, we're not going to give this to anybody, then you said, hey, we want to publish it in the newspaper. That was a problem. I think that this is a good idea.
I do too. I think the questionnaire has some really good questions that you would want to know about your candidates before voting on them.
Well, and it's useless to give them just us, because we're only 7 votes versus the members, so.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I think the more information that the voters have, the better, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I need a motion.
I make a motion that we publish the question and answers from the candidates.
I'll second.
Along with the bios.
On both the website and,
And with media.
Okay.
provided to media entities that are interested.
Okay. All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
So are we gonna have to amend this for them to give permission like they send to bio, so we're good?
It's in their
It's in there.
candidate
All right,
application.
that's all I got.
It's in the application.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions, motion carries. All righty, the corporate tax returns for municipal engineering in the club at Hidden Creek, Mr. Krigler and Ms. Carolyn.
Yeah, so these are the tax returns for 2022 for Messi and the club. These are due on September 15th. These have been prepared by Warren Averett, I'm sorry, and they're reflective of the information that they gathered and published in the audit. So we're asking for approval to file those. And of course, the Holly Navarre tax return will come after that.
So I could never really find where is the first page that talks the total tax liability? Okay.
No, it's, that was gonna be my question. I think it's gonna be on the 990T for Holly and Bar Water.
That's right. Neither of these
Tax
entities
liability
pay.
is due to the owner, not to the
Yeah,
corporation.
So
That-
which form is the final tax? Because I looked through all of them and I.
Holland bars.
yeah, Holly and
Yes.
Bar's.
Have yet.
But
So
that,
all of these fall under Holly Bar?
yeah, they're disregarded entities.
For the amount due. We still have to
But
file these
check,
at a
check.
certain schedule.
But I have a real question that means that, okay, we have $284,991 worth of ordinary business income for the year, which works out, well, long story short, do we have carryover losses cover that, or we have to pay taxes on it?
The answer is, according to Kristen, not in writing, but verbally, there are plenty of carryover losses, and I don't need to worry about that for some time to come.
I was thinking that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure.
His answer in plain English was, is Holly Navarre going to owe any tax due to the profit from municipal engineering? And the answer is, according to Kristen, no, because there are accumulated losses from the golf course prior to the tax change under Trump that still cover, and will for some time apparently. So
I think it was about $50,000 in taxes.
that is correct.
And it's small T Trump, not large T Trump. Sorry, trying to make some levity.
Alrighty, so,
I make a motion to approve the submission of the corporate tax returns for Messi and PCHC before the deadline as presented.
okay. The motion is to, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second for approval of these tax returns.
Do you need to include in that motion that he can sign? Okay, good. By the board approval.
CEO signs, or does, Bill, do you sign?
I signed for a message.
Messi.
I work at the pleasure of the board. You
So it
approve
was
it, I sign
just
it.
an issue last year because it was me, so we're good with President, CEO sign. I just remember something, we're good, never mind, keep going.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Next up, employee health benefits, Mr. Krigler.
Yes, so this is our annual renewal for our employee health insurance. One Digital is our benefits provider. They provided quotes for FY24. Quotes are shown under tab 9. So what we have is a quote for a renewal with Florida Blue, who we're currently with. Like we also have a quote for United Healthcare as well as Aetna. So the increase, if we stay with Florida Blue, is 7.37% increase. The quotes from United Healthcare and Aetna were both higher. So we're recommending that we stay with Florida Blue with the 7.37 increase in cost. Given that this was in relative terms, a modest increase, we're recommending to keep the plan the same.
The higher price for the other packages didn't include additional benefit?
There should be, well, so we do have Jeannie with One Digital here, and she jumped up, so she can help answer that. But I believe it was apples to apples.
So, yeah.
And Jeannie, before you start, would you state your name for the record?
Yes, hi, good evening. I'm Jeannie Hansen, and I'm with One Digital. When we go to quote, when we compare packages, we do compare them the best we can, apples to apples, right? We're not giving a deductible and increasing those premiums to skew those numbers. So we do our best generally with large groups, like the size that we're working with Holly Navarre. Generally, we can take those benefits and we can tweak them with each of the carriers. So that is what we do. So we did compare apples to apples.
Okay. Any other questions on the package as presented?
And this is annually?
This is an annual, these are annual numbers that you see at the bottom there. The annual increase will be $116,848.
Do you remember how much it went up last year?
Actually, I do. I have that information pulled up right here. Last year it went up 51,000. But last year we were able to bring the overall increase down because what we were working with last year is we were working with the ancillary as well. So that ancillary, we were able to find significant savings in the ancillary. Oops, I'm sorry. So we made the change, right, to the ancillary. We did look at other ancillary options this year, and there was a little bit of savings, but we don't recommend that you change your ancillary carriers every year. It's disruptive to the employees, and also, it's also about the relationships that you have with those carriers and maintaining those relationships. Being good consumers, if you will.
All right, any other questions?
Make a motion, we approve the Florida Blue insurance renewal.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have a camera trailer purchase. Phil Phillips.
So we've been talking for some time about, we have some money in the bank that we have built up. And me and Clinton and Mark and Jeff, since he's been here, have been talking about how to spend some of that money to the benefit of both parties. And amongst other things, the primary interest of both parties is I&I. Holly Navarre has a need for a camera system that is capable of being used in locations that we can't get the trailer to. The trailer was bought because it could get to locations that a van or a truck couldn't get to. We also do have an interest in a more modern van, but the pricing of all of the things that we consider with regard to I&I are more than we have available to spend. So Mark and Clinton have a preference for and can use most, essentially a camera similar to the one we have, but mounted on a side-by-side that can pretty much go anywhere in the franchise area and get to any manhole we have. It wouldn't be limited to just those areas where you would use the side-by-side. It could be used on the streets as well. In addition to that, inventorying manholes is an issue that Holly Navarre has, and the ability to document the condition of a manhole. Short of having some permanently storable visual reference, we depend upon someone to go out there and pop the manhole and look down in it and go through a checklist and say, this is what they see. And as you can imagine, you can send 10 different people out there in 10 different moods and any one of the 5 days of the week, and you get a different result. Whereas if we had a picture of that manhole, it could be referenced for forever. The condition today, the condition next year, the condition 10 or 20 years from now, the condition after the manhole is repaired. So we evaluated some systems that are capable of essentially photographing the interior condition of manholes. And essentially these systems stitch together all those many pictures that are taken down hole and create a three-dimensional picture that you can, you know, scroll around and look up and look down and see the condition of anything in the manhole. So I essentially left it to Mark and Clinton to solicit and figure out what is available within the market to accomplish our desires. Part of the problem we have, and part of what the board would be voting on tonight, is there is essentially no way in good faith to comply to the letter of the law with the purchasing policy. These systems are not, they're not capable of, everyone is different. All of them feature different benefits and advantages and disadvantages. There's no way to bid these things equally against each other. I'm going to let Mark describe, we have gone out and priced numerous camera systems, both for the side-by-side unit and for the manhole camera. But there is essentially no way to compare these things side by side. With that, I'll let Mark speak to the process they went through, which of the units and why that he has selected. I'll just cut to the chase on that and tell you that he did that independently of me. And just a reminder, this thing needs to be marketable to us too. So me on my own, you know, I had an idea of what I wanted in these things, and the price can vary considerably, especially on the manhole camera. So, you know, Mark did his own independent thing, and I did my own independent thing, and I can tell you on the side-by-side, we were both in agreement with what we should purchase. On the manhole camera, a little bit of difference there, but I would have to say that after Mark answered my questions, I am actually on board with his recommendation as to what to purchase, and quite frankly, it was the cheaper of the alternatives, surprisingly, by a significant amount of money. So I'll let Mark and Clinton talk about the process they went through with regard to who they solicited, what they solicited, what they're looking for, why these things need that, and then we'll pick it up from there. So.
Pick your pick.
Well, I'll just tell you that Mark did most of the research on all this equipment. He's been involved with the camera system that we currently have, and him and his team have been utilizing that to identify and other issues in our collection system. So he called in several vendors. Now I went and looked at most all the products. There was one that I missed, but we looked at, you know, big box trucks loaded down with video gear and, you know, apparatuses to take cameras in and out with, and all the way down to Sprinter vans. And all of them had, you know, different products that were great, bright and shiny, and, you know, it was like Christmas time. All the guys wanted to gather around and, you know, run the camera. And we did take a couple of them out to some places where we had some issues and stuck the camera in and ran their equipment. But when we really got to talking about it, the camera that we have now in the trailer setup works great for what we use it for. Takes up less space in the roadway. What we really needed was the side-by-side where we could access places like the wood mod easements. And there's
several other places similar to that area that we can't get a truck or trailer into. Got to have a ATV with the portable equipment mounted on it to get in there to it. And then as we were diving off into this, Mark got talking about a manhole camera and how, you know, just like Phil said, you can take 3 or 4 different guys out there, even though all of them have looked at manholes, some of them will come back with a different opinion about the same manhole. But if you stick a camera in it, it's got a 360 view, looks up and down, stick it in there, pull it out, take that video footage back to the office, we can all look at it and all have the assessment right there in our laps, on our laptop. So with that, we decided that the big box truck or even the Sprinter van at this time probably wasn't what we needed. We could keep our camera that works now, and we've had, you know, good luck with it. We've had, anytime that something's gone wrong with it, the vendors come out and help us get it repaired. So that was kind of a deciding factor too. But I'll let Mark take it from you if you want to add anything to that.
Really, the only thing I would like to add is to be assured that when we looked at all of these vendors, how we first approached it is we said, bring us all your wares, show us everything you have, okay? And then we talked. What did we feel that we needed for our end of our water system? And then we went back to them and said, modify your quotes to take care of these items, and then they did that. And honestly, the equipment came in close, very close, but the factors that we found was costly, not only at the CAPEX, the capital investment, but also in the operational cost later, was the software and the implementation of the software and the integration of the software into the system that we're presently using. And so what we have now is we presently have an IBAC system, and we have a staff that's trained already in that, and we're using it, and we're comfortable with it. But it's also I think that it provides everything that we need. The other thing about the equipment is, about each company is the cost of training, and we have we have a workforce that in the sewer collections is really where the rubber meets the road, is entry level. And in order to operate this equipment, they have to be certified by an organization. And the training that's involved in getting the certification is very expensive. And some of them have a high fee. In fact, I think one of them, the fee was $3,600 per training session. Well, you can imagine, I went back and listed, we had 2 training sessions last year. That's an expense of operational expenses that I didn't think we want. IBAC is far less. Matter of fact, they have no training. It's lifetime. It comes with the equipment, and that was one of the largest. The largest factor that I looked at, and the other one is that we're using now. Now the manhole camera is, I think, it's an enormous asset because of, like Clinton said, I can see a camera, and we had one instance of one, and I'll just tell you, we did just a few months back in a rain event. We called crews in. I think we pulled 120 manhole covers while it rained that weekend. And I got some reports back that these are in good shape. Everything's great. But we saw an event happen during one of our rain events that told us that something's wrong, and we went and pulled that section again and literally had trees growing in that manhole. Okay? And so, you can blame a person, it doesn't do any good you can blame a person if you want, but if you have a video of this manhole, that's just not going to happen. And the other advantage is that Dale and Phil are very versed in this. I can send them this video to them and say, tell me what you think here. Because the I&I budget is limited, but it's very important that we spend the money wisely. This camera, I think, that will allow me to train 1 or 2 people to take, what they claim is you can get 60, 70 pictures a day. That's probably an exaggeration, but but we have them for archives that we can send them to anybody to look at. And that's why we chose the IBAC system.
I have a question for you. What kind of warranty comes with this particular unit? And is it separate for different components of the unit? You know, the camera, the machine, the screens?
It's essentially all 1 year.
Just 1 year?
I don't see the side-by-side, sorry.
Well, the side-by-side itself is a Kubota side-by-side. It is protected by its own factory warranty, which
Yeah.
is longer and prorated, you know.
I see the camera, but I don't
Do
see
they have
the
any kind of
side-by-side.
extended warranty?
I'm sure you could buy an extended warranty for the Kubota, but I don't believe you could buy an extended warranty for the camera. I will, just to add, but it's directly related to your question there. So you got his perspective on how he made his decision. With regard to the manhole camera, Mark is actually preferring the $21,000 camera over the next one we liked, which was $172,000. And I quite frankly saw benefit in the $172,000 and had questions about the 21, but Mark went back and did some more homework and has actually convinced me that the $21,000 camera is the better option at this point in time anyway. So that's kind of a no-brainer. We don't really have any experience with either of those two camera systems. There is one person locally that does have some experience with those types of cameras. However, it's neither one of the one we considered, and it's something that does something almost totally different than what we want to do. But that's that. With regard to the sewer camera, that's a no-brainer in my opinion. IBAC has provided service to us that is so extraordinary, it is unbelievable. Their willingness to be here when we need them for training or have questions, and the repair, and we have had several repairs of the existing tractor. You can't stuff that stuff down in manholes and run it several hundred feet away and wind it back, pulling it by that cord, and not expect there to be some challenges and repairs. But their service, both from training and answering questions and troubleshooting, it's been extraordinary. And as Mark said, it's a system we already have. We're already used to it. So cost-wise, as Mark said, the IBAC system is not the cheapest, and it's not the most expensive. The cost of the system, you know, of course, is the combination of both the side-by-side itself and the camera. The Kubota obviously is a higher-end side-by-side as opposed to some of the others, I suppose. If we went back to Jetvac, they might consider mounting it on something else, but it's their standard vehicle that they convert into a rearward-facing cabin to be able to use the equipment. So in my mind, it's kind of a no-brainer. But as I said to begin with, it's almost impossible to compare apples to apples and get 3 quotes, and we wanted to be honest about that. Just as it was impossible for us to get apples to apples quotes when we bought the original system. So,
if I might say it too, the ATV is totally independent. It has its own generation system, it has its own cleaning system on it, it has its own camera, it has its own computer system on it. Matter of fact, they modify it to where you actually sit in a station and operate the computer and the controls of it. So it's not just a box sitting on an ATV. This is you can drive it, go there and do what you have to do. You have everything you need.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It looked like,
we did discuss it at the municipal board meeting, so David is pretty familiar with what we're looking at.
And to be clear, this will be an asset of municipal engineering that Holly Navarre Water System will have full use of?
This is an asset that is going to be purchased by municipal engineering. It's going to be purchased by municipal engineering because municipal engineering will use this equipment. Once that purchase is made, and of course, the primary reason is the payment of sales tax. The sales tax is going to be paid on this purchase. Who actually owns that asset after the purchase is made, Mark, is going to be dependent upon primarily what our accountants tell us is best for both organizations, and potentially we might have a question for Will or two. So I don't know the answer to that question. If I had to take a guess at this point in time, I believe it would probably be in everyone's interest to transfer it to Holly Park.
Is this something that municipal engineering can use as a revenue generator?
I wouldn't be here talking about it if we couldn't use
Right,
it.
well, I just want to make sure that's.
It has to be. And maybe you should vote before you talk about this, but I'll go ahead and throw it out. We still have additional funds that we're talking about other things. We'll bring those things to the board. One of the other issues is in the audit, you know, Kristen noted that we've got more money in a single checking account than is covered by FDIC. Since this isn't going to push us to that limit, we'll also be coming back to the board here shortly, probably next month, with some way to split that money up to get it insured in the meantime too as well. So.
And so that's what I was gonna confirm. This is not being financed. This is all coming out of your check.
Cash.
Your,
It's going to be paid
pocketbook,
for in
and
cash.
it leaves you plenty for operations.
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah, we wouldn't let it.
Contingency fund or not?
Yes, yeah. And as I said, there is more money there that needs to be spent and something that can be used by both entities. And we've got some ideas. We're, you know, tossing.
Did you already get your ground penetrating radar?
He's already got that.
I make a motion
that's
to
done
approve
approved.
both messy purchases as recommended by staff.
Second.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Call the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. Merry Christmas. Early Christmas. Christmas in August. Okay, so next up on the agenda is the elevated storage tank, the award of the bid for that.
Right, so this is the elevated tank located at the intersection of 87 and Highway 98, just east of the Elevate Navarre development. We received 4 bids on this project. We had a base bid for a steel tank, and we had a bid alternate for a composite tank. You can see on the slide here, the steel tanks are on the left, and the composite tank is on the right. It's called a composite tank because that column is concrete, and the top of the tank, the bowl where the water is stored, is steel. So the overall low bidder was CB&I, Chicago Bridge and Iron. They were at about, I think it was $4,030,000 approximately. Caldwell Tank was low on the composite bid. They were at, I think, about $100,000 higher than that. It should also be noted that as part of our easement agreement at this site, we made an agreement with the developers of Elevate Navarre that it would be a pedosphere style tank, which is the shape shown on the left there, the steel tank. So that's kind of in the background. And really the reason that we added this bid alternate is we were led to believe that the composite tank was going to be significantly lower and offer us some cost savings. That did not bear out in the bids. So you know, that's part of the, you know, one of the reasons why we're recommending the steel tank. Of course, you know, yesterday we received some additional information from Caldwell Tanks. They had some additional information they felt they wanted to provide. I think the composite's a great product. There's nothing wrong with it. There's pros and cons of both types of tanks, but I think there's some kind of unique situations here where, especially with this agreement with the developer, that we would have to check with them before we change the shape of the tank. So, and you want to add anything to that, Phil?
I think that was a great summary, Jenner.
I make a motion, we accept the Chicago Bridge and Iron Company bid for the elevated steel.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. We had a little bit of questions as far as are there any advantages to a composite tank over the steel tank as far as the maintenance of it, the lifespan of it, will it last longer? Will it cost more to maintain, less to maintain? What can y'all
You'll
answer about that.
You want me to go down that rabbit hole?
Well, we feel like they'll both last a long time. I can't say one will last longer than the other. We have experience with the steel tanks. What do we have? 5 of them, 6 of them. So we know how to maintain those. We know what we spend on those. We don't have a composite tank. You got to paint the top of it the same frequency. You got to paint the steel tank. The concrete's going to require some type of maintenance or cleaning. You probably wouldn't coat that. You know, the information from Caldwell kind of discounted that. So we don't think they presented all those costs. So, you know, the jury's out on that. We think it's probably closer to a wash in the long run. But both of these are long-term, long design life, you know, items that you build and you have it almost forever. You just got to maintain it with coatings and inspections that we do routinely on the other tanks.
The only thing the board needs to be aware of, the CIP for this is well under this. I mean, this was 2 years ago that we did the CIP amount, so there's going to have to be some budgeting that we take in, because none of these met the CIP amount for this.
What was the CIP amount?
2.7.
Last number carried was 2.75.
And this project is part of the $19 million.
I'm not saying there's not money in there with the things we have planned. I'm just letting the board know that.
Is the $4,029,900, is that an all-in, all-done price?
That
It's
doesn't count the
It's for the
booster
tank,
pump
and it's
station.
not
That is correct.
included in the building.
Just for the tank?
Yeah.
Just the
But
tank.
the tank was the 2.75. That did not include everything.
But I think even back then, several years ago, we thought that was it was gonna be higher than that.
Yeah,
We just
in fact,
hadn't updated it.
prior to this bid and the weeks prior to this bid, we kind of did some checking around the country with regard to what we thought the prices were going to be. They have varied extremely over the last 2 years, and I'm sure Clinton or Jeff will tell you that I was guessing $4 million because there had been a couple of bids opened recently at about 3.8. Those bids did not include the extremely tight construction limits that we have, so we figured it'd be a couple $100,000 in extra foundation costs to avoid getting into the wetlands or going off-site, and that's where it came in at, right there, so.
What's the timeline on this?
Mark, they have told us that, well, I haven't specifically asked CBI now that we know they're a low bidder, but they all told us that you can count on them needing that site for 365 days before we can touch it to build the booster pump station, so.
Any other questions, discussion?
So their proposal didn't include a timeline schedule?
They have 365 days to build it.
Okay.
We'd love for them to tell us it's only going to take 270 so we can begin the other construction. Although, quite frankly, it might be to our benefit that prices may come down. They can't go up much more.
Don't say that.
We might go on.
Knock on wood.
But liquidated damages kick in at 365 days. They have 365 days to build the project. We tried to change it within the bid process itself, and that's when they told us no. Otherwise, they're going to start building in, having to pay the liquidated damages in the bid itself, so.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Next up is the Service First CD funding. Mr. Fregler?
Yeah, so we may have gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit on this one and kind of walk through it. So at the July, it was the special meeting in July, we discussed closing this Service First loan. I believe we voted to go ahead and close the loan. We did go ahead and pay that amount due. I believe we paid that out of an operating account. And then when we closed the loan or went to close the loan, that initial draw of $475,000 is in a Service First checking account that's been there since, I believe, the summer of 2022. Barbara's been working with Service First. We had numerous discussions all summer on how to resolve both the loan issue and what to do with this checking account. They kind of implied that there could be penalties related to the original loan if we close that account and move that money. So one of our options or the recommendation that we came up with was, as proposed by them, that we do this CD at 5%, which is a nice rate. And then that would, quote, it'd be kind of a good faith effort to work with them. They felt like they did not want us to close the loan. They wanted our business. So this is like I said, continual discussions with them about how to best negotiate this, a resolution to this. I will say it's kind of since come up, we've had some additional discussions. It's unclear whether this full amount's FDIC insured, so that's kind of a concern. So yeah, really, I think we just may have gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit. One route we may need to do is to have some discussions with Will and have him look at the original agreement, just because they've implied that that there could be penalties related to the original loan if we don't do this. So like I said, it's been back and forth with them all summer. First to close out this loan and now to deal with this checking account. So
I have a quick question. So we closed the loan because they wanted us to put $3 million in an account at 0% interest.
We didn't want to do that.
Right? And now we paid the loan off, and now they're willing to give us 5% on $500,000. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. On a CD, but still, like, how insane that they could have had our business just give us some interest on the $3 million.
Yeah, it's been some strange back and forth.
I would say I'd cut ties with service first.
Yeah, and I have there's no allegiance to them. I don't know anybody there.
Yeah, I
this
say we go over the
existing.
go over the contract. If we can get out of there, let's get out of there.
If after we approve if we approve this CD after 13 months, then can we cut ties with them?
That's what he implied. He didn't give us anything in writing, so I think there's some, skepticism about that.
After them, after them requiring we transfer $3 million into their account, or actually they wanted all of they wanted us to transfer $10 million for less than $2 million loan. I wouldn't give them a penny of my money, and I'm not going to vote to give them a penny of our members' money either.
Right.
I would like to see, and like that bank to provide to the board, a copy of the corporate resolution allowing them to open up that checking. I'd also like our attorney to review it and see if we have any legal recourse.
Yeah, we can provide a packet with all those documents.
Okay. I'd like to see.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that because I don't. I sent you the text earlier. I think we paid them 1% origination fee, so $25,000 there down the drain. And now they're talking about wanting to charge us to close out a checking account that probably was never approved by the board of directors. And yeah, I think we need to give this to our attorney and let him advise us as to whether or not we have any recourse against the bank. But as far as keeping an account or opening up a CD, we can do that somewhere else.
Right. Because
Regions Bank will give us 5.15% on a 13-month CD. 5% CD you can get for 8 months. The Zenobus down the street is 5.05% for 12 months. That 5% that they're offering us, it's not a real deal. It's the same thing they'd give to Eden.
Which I do think we need to be looking into staggering some CDs.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good idea.
I'm not sensing any appetite to go down this road.
Yeah. Notwithstanding the fact that this is a violation of our bylaws. It's not FDIC insured. So that's why I want to see a copy of that corporate resolution that said we were violating our bylaws.
Okay. So do we have a motion as to how we want to move forward, or we're going to just...
So we threw out a bunch of numbers where we could invest this money at the same kind of return. Does our staff agree with that?
Well,
this recommendation was to accept this. I gotta believe all these questions should have been going through some of their heads. Why do we want to stick with them if we can get the same thing somewhere else?
Once again, this was a little bit of a unique situation because there was an existing relationship. We were trying to work through a loan that we wanted to get out of. So we felt like there had to be some good faith negotiating, which would, probably in retrospect was maybe not the best approach. But this was not a situation where we were trying to go out to market what's the best deal we can get. We can still do that. We can do that at any time, but this was a little different because we were trying to, like I said, negotiate the closing of that loan.
That part I understand. Need this CD, can we get a good CD rate, comparable rate somewhere else?
Yes, the answer to that
What
is
are we
yes.
getting? Okay, I'm happy. I saw the head nod I was looking for.
Or you can just go in the Ameris at 3.5. So it's not that much of a difference. I think our original thought was, oh, let's try to maximize the return on this little bit of amount, but I think there's some other issues here that are kind of mitigating that circumstance.
We have to make sure, see what kind of, have to legally look at, we're not obligated to be given service some big penalty.
Right.
That'll be more than a difference that you could get. We make, like I said, if we could take this for 13 months and not incur a penalty and then we're done, that might be a easier way out that'll be in the best interest of our members. So it doesn't cost us money.
Yeah, I think tabling it and letting us involve Will and get some options would be a more prudent approach.
All right, let's table it. All right, let's move on.
One thing, Mr. President, just whenever we discuss things like this, I try and remind everybody that's here, the board members listening online, that a majority of the people that are responsible for what we're dealing with here on this one are no longer here at Holland of our water system.
That is correct. All right, engineering report, Mr. Phillips.
I&I is down a little bit, but I think the good news is really on Donna's report that the unaccounted for water loss
Yes.
has dropped significantly to extraordinarily low levels of 2.9%.
Now to
And
keep-
Donna did
now
it, so,
to-
and Donna did it, so it's not creative.
Now to stay there, Donna. That's really good work.
2.9.
Get out there and find it.
Next month, if homie be in big trouble.
They say that's 1 month in a row.
All right, any questions for
Won't be here next
Mr.
week.
Phillips? All right, well, that concludes our agenda items. I don't have anybody signed up on member forum. Before we adjourn, I would like to announce that the election timeline that we approved has a opening, or say an opening. Applications are going to be available to any interested members in becoming a member of the Holly Navarre Water System Board as of August 21st, 23. So applications are going to be available, and they are due back by 4 p.m. on September 28th of 2023. That's an earlier time frame than we've had in prior years. So for anyone that's listening online and anyone that is interested in being a board member, you can begin to pick up your application starting on August 21st.
There's two slots being.
Yeah, there are two positions open. Myself and Bill Thiel our terms are up, so anyone that's interested in running.
And one other announcement for the members regarding the elections, the absentee ballots and requesting proxies, which are normally cut off after the first week of January, will now be cut off prior to Christmas on December 22nd.
Yes. But the timeline for
I know we've got, it's a longer period now, but we're cutting it off.
Right.
A month prior to what we normally do, so people out there need to be aware of that.
Yeah, will that be published on our website, the election timeline? So it'll all be available on our website for that. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All in favor?